All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time to begin learning and living the wisdom of the Tao. Tuesday Tao, ladies and gentlemen. Reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. And we are all the way up to the 57th verse of the Tao Te Ching that comes to us from Lao Tzu from 25 centuries ago, maybe even a little more. That's 2,500 years, ladies and gentlemen. And still today, this wisdom from Lao Tzu, through us from many teachers and people who have studied the wisdom of Lao Tzu, it still today has a current meaning. And it's not something that doesn't really apply nowadays. And it's amazing to me that that is the way it is. And so today, Dr. Wayne Dyer titles his little extrapolation, his chapter on this 57th verse of the Tao Te Ching, Living Without Authoritarianism. Isn't that interesting, ladies and gentlemen? Living without authoritarianism. Now, that could go down many rabbit holes. But let's see here what the 57th verse and what Lao Tzu has to say about this idea. It begins by saying, if you want to be a great leader, you must learn to follow the Tao. Stop trying to control. Let go of fixed plans and concepts, and the world will govern itself. How do I know this is so? Because in this world, the greater the restrictions and prohibitions, the more people are impoverished. The more advanced the weapons of the state, the darker the nation. The more artful and crafty the plan, the stranger the outcome. The more laws are posted, the more thieves appear. Therefore, the sage says, I take no action, and people are reformed. I enjoy peace, and people become honest. I do nothing, and people become rich. If I keep from imposing on people, they become themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, boom, and that is the 57th verse of the Tao Te Ching. And that is a very interesting one. I'm excited to see here where Dr. Wayne Dyer takes this, because there's many different thoughts and concepts that you could take from that verse there. The letting go of fixed plans and concepts, and the world governing itself. And you could take that metaphorically into your own life and sometimes stop trying to control so much. And then he says, how do I know this is so? And he has those paradoxes once again, which are in all of these verses, or if not most of them. The greater the restrictions, the more people are impoverished. The more crafty the plan, the stranger the outcome. The more laws that you make, this is the most paradoxical, the more laws that you make, the more thieves that appear. And then he ends with, therefore, the sage says, take no action, enjoy peace, and, let things take care of themselves. And at finishing, if I keep from imposing on people, then they become themselves. So that's very fascinating. Let's dive into what Wayne Dyer has to say about this concept of living without authoritarianism, referencing the 57th verse of the Tao Te Ching, ladies and gentlemen. He begins by saying, in this and some of the following chapters of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu counsels the rulers of 2,500 years ago on how and why to pursue a high quality of leadership. And so I find this fascinating. I'll expand here. I find it fascinating that Lao Tzu goes he goes through different subjects throughout the Tao Te Ching. Like in the beginning, it's living the mystery and understanding the mystical nature of the universe and the paradoxical unity, how things are separate, but they are one, and like this weird, this spiritual philosophy, and then goes deeper into God and the Tao and how the Tao is that force. And then all the way now, and then knowing thyself and how to live life more peacefully and how to think better. So, psychology. And then he works all the way to what Wayne was just talking about here now later, starting with the 57th verse. He goes, in the next few chapters, Lao Tzu is actually counseling the rulers of his time back then. With all this wisdom that he's already put forth, he's like, all right, now time to lay down, some great knowledge for the people in positions of power or leadership. And so Wayne continues here. His advice is pertinent today in the 21st century to all forms of leadership, including government, business, and in particular, parenting, which was one of Wayne's favorite subjects. The essential message, he continues, in this 57th verse is to allow rather than interfere. And we've talked about this a lot on this series, ladies and gentlemen, the striving versus arriving, the psychology of striving and arriving, or another way to say it is allowing instead of interfering. And so now, Wayne continues, I don't interpret this to mean letting an infant crawl into traffic or leaving a child alone near a swimming pool. Obviously, you must be sensible when supervising those who could harm themselves or others. So, kind of take that idea and metaphorically translate it to all the other topics there, leadership, government, business, and then that example would have been parenting. But it's interesting how these ideas can have a larger reference and meaning across many areas, both the micro, the small, and the macro, the large areas of the world and our lives. And so he continues here. It's sensible, when supervising those who could harm themselves. What I believe Lao Tzu is conveying is that allowing is quite often the highest form of leadership, which I'll add would seem contrary to the way that we most commonly think about it. To where leaderships need to, or people in leadership positions need to have a whole bunch of influence and make a lot of things move and go. But according to Lao Tzu here, the opposite actually creates better results. Now, this can be debated many ways. We're talking about spiritual philosophy here, ladies and gentlemen. At least that's the way that I think about it. And so, once again, Lao Tzu is conveying here is that allowing is quite often the highest form of leadership. He states that, quote, the more people are impoverished in societies with excessive restrictions and prohibitions. The same can be true in families with commandments that must obey without question. The more authoritarian any system is, the more outlaws will appear. And isn't that so true? And it's a funny, obvious paradox. Wayne continues, on the other hand, when children are encouraged to explore and exercise their inquisitiveness, they're inspired to be their best with little need for regulation. So when you change the way you view the need for rules, family members will tend to make decisions based on what's best for everyone rather than themselves. And so once again, metaphorically transferring that idea into leadership, government, and business and the rest of life is it's like when, this idea that the more rules there are, the more chances that you have people, struggling and trying to fend for themselves. It's not to say that rules are, not necessary. It's just that I think, sometimes we can be a little excessive about things. And so he continues, see what happens, for instance, if you drop an absolute curfew time for your teenagers, asking them to just be sensible about what time they come home and to notify you if they're going to be later than normal. You may find that because you didn't impose yourself on them, they end up coming home even earlier than what you had expected. But he says, than when they had a strict curfew governing their conduct. And so I have no experience in this matter of life. However, Wayne Dyer, I believe, had 7 children. So he had quite the amount of experience to be able to talk on even this subject here. But he continues, examine the restrictions. Remember, this is a metaphor, ladies and gentlemen, going back to living without authoritarianism and Lao Tzu speaking to the people in positions of leadership. And so examine the restrictions that you enforce in your family. And so remember that the effective parents, he says, don't want to be leaned on. They want to make leaning unnecessary. After all, you want your children to be responsible, healthy, successful, and honest, not simply because you're there to monitor them to do it all, but because it is within their nature to do so. So set an example and let them see that it's possible to be self-sufficient and enormously successful. Allow them to learn to trust in their highest nature rather than having to thumb through a rule book to decide what's right. Change the way you look at the need for edicts, laws, and prohibitions that see yourself as someone who doesn't need to rule with an iron fist. And then enjoy taking this revised view of your leadership abilities into every area of your life where you're considered to be, quote unquote, the boss. What follows, Wayne continues, is some 21st century advice based on this verse, the 57th verse of the Tao Te Ching, that was written 2,500 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. See, I don't have too much rambling to do here on this parenting subject, but I always love when he speaks about it because it creates great kind of personal understandings in your own life and how you're like, oh, that is kind of that way. And, you know, when there is too much control on something or someone, they tend to not create that kind of self-governing, quality, which is very necessary for all of us. This kind of ability to judge good and bad for our own selves and make our own decisions rather than just being, you know where I'm going, ladies and gentlemen. But so Wayne says here, practice the art of allowing yourself. Begin by letting yourself be more spontaneous and less regimented in your daily life. Take a trip without first planning it. Go where you're instinctively guided to go. And these are all great, I don't know, when you begin to do these kind of things, you experience life in a new way, so as to say, you get like these winks from the universe where you're like, whoa, that was weird that worked out that way, or these kind of things that make you go, But ladies and gentlemen, so take a trip without first planning it, or go where you're instinctively guided. Tell the authoritarian part of you to take a break. There's one of his speeches where he says, just travel and then go west. And, the person he's talking to is like, west? You want me to just, like, where are we going to go? What's the destination? No, he says, just west. And that's it. And see, and see what happens. And if the road stops going west, then you turn where you need to go and continue. It was a funny example, though, of just going west. But he continues here, excuse me, introduce a different side to yourself and the world by affirming, I am free to be myself. I do not have to live by anyone else's rules. And I release the need for laws to regulate my behavior. And then secondly, he adds here, practice the art of allowing others. Catch yourself, he says, when you're about to cite a rule as a reason for saying no to a child or someone that you supervise. And instead consider the ramifications of saying nothing and just observing. Now, see, this may sound counterintuitive, but it's weird how these paradoxical things work. It's like the more you push and, force, the harder it's going to be, which seems counterintuitive. But when you change the way you look at your role as a leader, you'll find that very few edicts are necessary for people to conduct the business of their lives. Everyone has a strong sense of what they want to do, which is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, and what limits that they have, and how to actualize their dreams. At least we hope so. And that's why we're here, trying to shed some light on those things. But Wayne continues here, be like the Tao. And that's what Lao Tzu was talking about in this 57th verse. Allow others and enjoy how your non-authoritarian leadership inspires them to be themselves. And then finally, he ends each of these chapters. If you haven't been here before and you're just joining us for the first time, thank you very much. He ends each of these chapters with what's called Do the Tao Now. It's a little paragraph on how we can try to apply what was talked about and the wisdom of each of these verses and short, dialogues about the wisdom of the verse and how we can apply this practically into our lives today. So Wayne gives us do the Tao now, Tuesday Tao, ladies and gentlemen, or any day of the week. Make the time to do something you've never done before. And this is a great one. I'm surprised he hadn't made this suggestion earlier in the book. But make time to do something you've never done before. He says it could be walking barefoot in the rain, which would be an interesting experience, as long as it's not too cold, ladies and gentlemen. But even that might be interesting. Taking a yoga class, he continues, speaking before a group at a Toastmasters club, playing a game of touch football, jumping out of an airplane in a parachute. And it would be interesting to compare among 10 people who has done certain things and who has not done certain things out of that short list just there. Or anything else, he says, that you've always wanted to do. Recognize that you've created restrictions for yourself. It's an important helping yourself go through life thinking better question. It's like, recognize that you've created restrictions for yourself that keep you from new and expanding experiences. And find the time now to close your personal rule book and plunge in where you've never before wandered. Interesting. Also, make time to give those in your charge an opportunity to do the same, enjoying how much they accomplish with minimal or no action on your part. I had no idea, ladies and gentlemen, that was the direction that the chapter was going to go, but that's a boom to knowledge, and that's a boom to the wisdom of the Tao, ladies and gentlemen. Next week's verse is titled Living Untroubled by Good or Bad Fortune. And once again, he's speaking to the rulers of 2,500 years ago in his own time. And these things are so relevant to even us here today, which is just amazing to me, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll keep it short and sweet. I liked that one. And I really have no idea what I'm going to title this video, ladies and gentlemen, but we always do find something. So we'll see. And you'll know because you'll be watching after the fact. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, remember, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment. Seek to discover the wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of the Tao, that wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, that is out there that can help us on our journeys and begin, finally, to make happiness the way. There's no way to happiness. It is the way. It's the process that we bring to the journey So instead of telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, that becomes irrelevant in the entire journey. It is wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. At least that's our goal. And we're trying and we're pushing. And I also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, and we'll see. We'll probably be back before New Year's. So we'll have another New Year's edition of the Tuesday Dow. And so hope everybody's doing well, and I wish you all well. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate all of you that spend time here with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Lao Tzu, and in the past, all the wonderful authors and poets of the wisdom of the ages, and reading from the Hermetica on Wednesdays now, at least dialoguing on bits of that, trying to discover more wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. But if there's anything you'd like to say or a direction you'd like to send me in, leave a comment below. I appreciate you for being here. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got 2 videos coming out every week and short videos as well. And also you can expand the description below the video and get yourself a landscape painting, which is pretty bright right now, hard to see, but also a link to the book so you can get that for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. And C60 Purple Power as well. So treat yourself to health and have a great holiday, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. No, 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 no.